yes, the door was opened, but it was my responsibility to stay in that room. I could have been kicked right out that door if I wasn't pulling my own weight. And so the whole entire time was focus, be a sponge, and just learn everything you possibly can learn. And I didn't half-ass it. I'm starting, or you're starting?
I'm interviewing you.
You're interviewing me first.
Oh, is it?
Go ahead. Yeah. We're off to a great start.
Great.
This is why there's editing.
Solid. You stated multiple times. You've stated multiple times that people should be required to work in the service or hospitality industry as a rite of passage. Why do you feel so strongly about that?
100%. It puts you in a space of interacting with strangers, taking good notes, memorizing orders. Hospitality is the number one way to achieve, in my opinion, confidence in sales. It's in a fantastic way in college, especially, even when you're in high school, a young kid starting out as a busser or whatever, but it just, you learn the opportunities of how can I serve this person? It's your job. How do I make a positive impact? What's the impression that I want to leave? Obviously I want a good tip, so I'm going to do my job at a high level. And it's just really an opportunity to get in front of talking comfortable with strangers and other people. So I think it's a fantastic first job. And it is a requirement for both of my children.
I love it. So take me back to the oregano days. I've heard some of the extracurricular stories, but know that it was very shaping in your career as a starting point. I want to go back there and specifically tie into some of those scenarios that you mentioned and how they shaped you.
Dude, the oregano chapter was like one of the best chapters of my life. It was so much fun. I was one of the youngest guys of my group of friends. Everyone was 21 and older. I was younger. I was 19 when I started, which in Arizona is like the minimum age to serve alcohol. It's like the minimum age to be a server. And back then it was like, oh, what is this place? This is awesome. I had a fake ID. And so I had friends that could go to bars and do different things. And so just meeting and being around those people was a lot of fun at that time. But quite honestly, like what I learned was the ability to just adapt to so many crazy situations. Like there's so many walks of life that come in that sit down at your table, and just having the conversations with those people and trying to be like being funny or read the room is another big aspect of this. Because when you can understand and tap into how someone's feeling, you're able to adapt to make them in a better spot by the time that they leave. And so like you see a drink empty, like if you've seen it there empty, you know it's empty for a while, you know that person's frustrated and gonna get frustrated at some point. And so you try and fill that water cup as fast as possible. So that way, they leave with a good experience. But that chapter, man, like no wife, girlfriend, no kids, college days. I was living in a condo in Tempe. And just Oreganos was great too, because we didn't actually have to close like late night. It wasn't a bar. So we got out early and just had a really good time. It was a fantastic chapter.
Back in those days, were tips pooled? And I ask because everybody's asking you for a tip these days to literally hand you something
True.
Across the counter. And I'm wondering how that impacts actual service and the incentive. But did you pool them back then, or
No.
did you have?
So we earned our own tips, and we would make like $100 a shift, which back then was great. I had a 2-bedroom apartment paying $680 a month. Why I needed a 2-bedroom is beyond me, but I wanted a 2-bedroom, an extra space for, family or someone wanted to come over. But I was on my own. I lived in my own space. It was $680 a month. And I would make $100 a shift at Oreganos, and it would be, I'd work 5 shifts a week. So I'm making $2,000 a month. Plenty. I had no other expenses outside of gas and food. Mm-hmm. So it was plenty of money. There was no hourly rate back then. It was like $2.13, right? So now minimum wage it's like $12.15 for a tipped employee. And so we were making like $2. So you get a paycheck, but it'd be zero because it would just all go to taxes. And so you're just getting cash. But I took care of myself, paid for my own bills, no handouts, no nothing. And it was from that service industry. And so I'm like, I got to do a good job to get a good tip. And it was personal. I would take it personal if I didn't get that 20%. And so it's like, what did I do wrong? Right? Like what? But sometimes people just tip differently, and some tip really well and some, not so much.
That is a big one for me. I just think that like above and beyond service is getting rarer and rarer. We're all
Yeah.
kind of feeling that, unless you're at like fine dining, which I don't think those tips are split. But I was curious about that when that took hold. Let's jump forward to your drafting, your architecture career.
Yeah.
How did that come about as an interest? First time it became kind of crossed your consciousness, and what took you that direction?
Oh, that's funny. I've always been a creative. I always enjoyed drawing, writing, doing stuff when I was a kid and creating things. I had this really cool idea of getting into graphic design, it didn't end up being architecture per se. I just wanted to get into a school that allowed me to create. And I was at ASU for a year, and it was like, where the heck am I? This place is massive. I'm sitting in macroeconomics class with 400 kids. I'm not learning shit. And I remember having a conversation with my dad. I'm like, Dad, my final's coming up. It's freshman year, first semester. And I was like, I don't know if I can pass this class. And he goes, well, if you got 100% on the final, would you pass the class? And I said, no, there's no way. And he goes, well, skip the final. There's no reason to waste your time. Figure out what it is that you want to do. So I spent that next semester at ASU and was like, I need to start working. I want to start making money. I want to start building a life. Like, I didn't want to just be a broke college kid going to 4 years of college just to go to 4 years of college. This is what we thought we had to do. So we found ITT Tech, which unfortunately now is bankrupt, but that's the school I graduated from, got an associate's there, and it was computer drafting and design. I was like, well, this sounds really cool. I'm sure, number one, I could get a job, and I feel like it would help me in that creative outlet. And so we learned AutoCAD, and I didn't know anything about AutoCAD, which is the system that most architectural firms use, engineers use. You look up in all the buildings, and you can see the ceilings and the lights, and all those take construction documents, and you have to splice them up, and just even a small studio space is going to have, this thick of plans to understand how to build it. And you hand that to the GC and then they go build it. Well, we were drawing all the plans and knew all that stuff. I went to school for graphic design and creative stuff, but then I learned AutoCAD, and that was my first 9-to-5 type of job. Was at Fitch, company in Scottsdale, which is still around. And it was funny enough, I met... by the time I left, I was there about a year and a half. I became the job captain of all the coffee bean and tea leaves in the Southwest. And so I was doing all of their plans and whatnot. But we did some one-offs here locally. Like we did Fogo de Chao, the Brazilian steakhouse, Ling and Louie's off 92nd and Shea. We did that one. And I just met one of the owners recently. And she bought the place, like her and her husband, a couple years after it was built. And I swear I have those plans somewhere. And I'm like, I got to get these plans for you because it's really cool to see. This is 20 years ago. But I still visualize buildings and restaurants and all sorts of stuff in those type of construction document eyesight.
Yeah, and you've talked about enjoying like the flow of getting into it, the solitude and the focus of being in those work sessions, but there was a lack of creativity. Is that
100%? Yeah, I mean, we called ourselves Cad Monkeys. We would sit behind a desk and draw lines all day. We've had headphones on, and we would just listen to music, which sounds great, and it actually really was for a while. But then after time, like from 8 to 5 every single day, doing the same thing over and over and over, and not really talking to anybody, and just the flow and the zone out, and like it was great. But I need to get out, and I need to be around people and do some more things. Great company to work for, great industry. I just realized that, hey, this isn't for me. But had I not made that jump, I never would have known. And so I was able to jump in early. I was like 20 years old, and moved on to the next career by the time I was 22. But I remember when we would listen to the music, there was no Spotify back then. There's no Apple Music. There's none of that stuff, right? So we had one guy in our entire firm. There's probably like 80, 90 people here locally. It's a UK-based firm, but there's probably like 90 people. And he had downloaded his entire library, probably from like LimeWire or Napster or something, right? And put it on a shared, this is before Dropbox, right? Mm-hmm. But put it on a shared folder that anyone in the company could access, and we would just bump his tunes. It was the coolest thing ever. And we could all just tap into his library. And this was like, now all of a sudden we have music at our fingertips. And 20 years ago, we were finding creative ways to be able to share music and listen together.
And use that for flow.
Yeah, for sure.
I love it. Now we know the next chapter in your story, which is my favorite chapter, by the way, besides the present. But I'm curious, I've never asked you, I don't think, and even talking to Davenport, I've overheard a couple of your conversations, but do you ever think about, like, had you gone full-fledged architect, what that would look like, if that would be desirable? Because I could see that.
Yeah.
Like I could.
I had a whole vision board for that path.
Well, tell us about that.
The idea that I had was it would be very much more residential architecture, but it would be online visual aids for you to do a walkthrough through your home without it even being built, designed in multiple options, and you could pick and choose the furniture from that design and purchase it right then and there. And I was like, how cool would that be to build a business or a company or be a part of something like that? Now with AI and it's like rampant, but like this is way before the cloud and AI
Realtors
and,
doing flybys.
Yeah, all it was like, hey, let me show you my house. And like you had to walk in, and I was like, well, what if you could just see the house without having to walk in? Like,
and here we are.
And here we are, right? And so these were some of the things that I was thinking about doing, but I realized how challenging that would have been to do from complete scratch. I also realized that unfortunately, there's really no money in architecture. I think my salary was $27,000 a year. Granted, it's 20 years ago. Times change, things are different. But I saw like where the salary was for like our top architect. It was still maybe like $75,000, $80,000 a year, and I was like, no, I need to. I was very financially driven at that point, and I was like,
unless you own the firm type of deal.
Yeah, unless you started the business and own the firm. So, but yeah, I had a whole vision of what that would look like. Just funny, I never really shared those types of stories because, then the next chapter happened. I never really looked back.
Which is, let's get right into it. I mean,
yeah,
the moment your life changed, the moment I entered your life.
That was the moment.
In all sincerity, where our paths crossed.
Yeah.
You have talked about this a lot on the podcast, but I want to double click on it because you've talked a lot about Kim's influence and how much she helped as a soundboard and a perspective changer for you on it.
Yeah.
But go into detail on where you were at, your hesitations, and what you were feeling at the architecture firm or where you were at that point when the MasterTax opportunity presented itself.
Yeah, so I'm at Fitch doing architecture. I'm actually still in school while at Fitch. I'm finishing up my capstone project, and I designed a whole apartment complex and did some really cool things. And I'm at Fitch, and my dad had come from an entrepreneurial family. Talked about it a lot, and he started a payroll tax software before internet was a thing, right? He did it from scratch at home using fax machine stuff, dial up. And he had asked me, I was kind of sharing some like, hey, I'm kind of like getting burnt out with this architecture thing, this CAD thing. Like I want to be out into sales. And I'd been talking to Kim about this, and she said, well, why don't you just jump into something and just kind of start building the resume? Well, right around that same time, my dad had said, well, why don't you just come work at my company at MasterTax? And this was 100% further from any sort of nepotism that I can describe. It was very much, I've raised this kid. I've seen how this kid acts at home. I see how this kid acts with others. And I know he has the skill set to go dive into something. Even if he doesn't understand it, he'll figure it out. And he had that belief in me, and I still turned him down for a year. I said, no, I don't payroll, taxes. Like that sounds like the worst thing in the world. Like I want to create and I want to do fun things and I want to do
sexy.
Pretty pictures and all, like I want to color, and it just payroll and taxes sounded so black and white and boring to me. So fast forward a year, and Kimberly and I were talking this before we were married, and she goes, well, if it wasn't your dad, would you take the job? I said, 100%. It's a fantastic opportunity. And she goes, well, that's your answer. Like, take the job, go be a sponge, and like you always said, you'll be able to use it as a resume builder, and then go move on to something else. But at least get the experience with these next few years. And who better than your father to go ask? And at the time, my mom worked there as well as a family business. And so I could be a sponge with my parents. And I'm 22 years old, and I said, okay. So I took the job, and a year and a half later, he sold the company to ADP. But I remember walking in day one, and there you are. And we were both young bucks, I was 22, you were 21.
Also didn't know what I was doing.
But we got an opportunity, and the door opened, right? The door opened, and this is what the part of the story that I like to share is, yes, the door was opened, but it was my responsibility to stay in that room. Mm-hmm. I could have been kicked right out that door if I wasn't pulling my own weight. And so the whole entire time was focus, be a sponge, and try your best and have fun and just learn everything you possibly can learn. And I didn't half-ass it.
And we've talked about that in a sales function,
yeah.
Right? And ADP, with that wave after the acquisition, you were already had cut your teeth, got the playbook and the sales motion down. But talk about that next phase, which for their listeners that don't know, ADP really is best in breed, especially from a sales perspective. That on your resume, it's helped me. Stephen didn't need it, but it's extremely valuable on a resume that you've sold at ADP. Talk about that transition post-acquisition. We did have a lot of money behind us with an acquisition as those go, but talk about that transition.
Yeah, so my mentor, my first boss in the payroll industry, fantastic guy, I love him to death. Funny Irish guy, and you know him well, obviously.
He's got to come on here.
He's got to come on. We got the Donnie Huisms that we'll share. It's like, what do you mean it's going to take that long? I could be dead by then. Like they're so funny. But yeah, that transition. So MasterTax was very much like, hey, we got some goals for you. Let's see if you can hit them. And it was very flexible type of structure, if you will. It really wasn't a lot of structure. It was just kind of like sell. But I was selling to independent payroll providers across the country. MasterTax is a payroll tax software that they would use on the back end. And so I was talking to, they were essentially small businesses supporting small businesses, small payroll companies that were using our software to process thousands of clients. And the first thing I realized in the first 2 years before the acquisition actually was, man, I'm 22, 23, and I'm talking to these business owners that I thought were like high and mighty and all this stuff. And you figure out that they're small business owners and they're humans just as much as you're a human. And the faster you can realize that a C-suite or a business owner or somebody you feel is much more successful than you or much higher than you, and you can relate to them on a human relationship level, that's where everything becomes so much easier. And you're not forcing the sale and you're just having conversations.
Equal business stature.
Yes, and then it closes. So the transition to ADP though, yeah, there was a lot of executive management classes. I got certified in payroll through ADP. They paid for it. These are things I didn't have to do. These are things that were just available, but it was in my nature to go seek that knowledge. And I went and traveled to New Jersey, across the country, and did a whole leadership program just because, I don't know, maybe one day I'll become a leader. So I figure I might as well learn some of this stuff.
Well, and also at this time, I know what was circulating in your head with the product that we sold. It was being used by professional employer organizations.
Correct.
And your wheels were turning on how they were not only utilizing MasterTax, but packaging up and offering and the model there that was available. So talk about that. When were the juices flowing? And I know that had to be a big reason why you were diving deep on the knowledge.
Yeah, so the juices were flowing before acquisition. So I'm at the airport with my dad. We come back from a conference. They do multiple conferences a year with independent payroll companies.
Oh, I remember.
We had some fun times. We won't talk about San Antonio and the Riverwalk. We also won't talk about St. Louis.
Okay. Yep.
But yeah, so I remember bringing this up to my dad. I was like, Dad, I think I want to start a PEO. And I was selling MasterTax to PEOs, professional employer organizations, employee leasing. You get all sorts of work comp, payroll, HR, all sorts of back office stuff for small businesses. You throw them into a bundle, they get better rates, all sorts of stuff. And then you have the other side, which is the independent payroll provider, where they're processing stuff for the client under their EIN. It's not lumped under like an employee leasing structure. And so I told him, I was like, I think I really like the PEO model. And he goes, go payroll. And I go, what do you mean? And he goes, I was like, but they seem so much bigger and it's harder. I didn't understand. And he goes, no, go payroll and don't do anything yet because I have something I need to tell you. And I was like, what's that? And he goes, we're selling the business to ADP. And I'm like, oh, well, first of all, congrats. Like, that's amazing. And he goes, but don't tell anybody. I've got an NDA, but I wanted you to know this is happening in the next 30 days and be a sponge. Learn everything you possibly can. They're the best, biggest payroll company in the world. Do everything you can, work there for as long as you want, but when it's time and you find the right opportunity, make the leap. And that was the advice that I got before ADP took over. And so I did have that juice. I did have those wheels turning. It's like, okay. And it wasn't opportunistic in a negative way. It really was, hey, I'm going to take the things that are in front of me, that are being offered to me, and I'm going to learn everything I possibly can because number one, it's going to prepare me for the future. But number two, it's going to make me better in my current role. And I'm going to be a better salesperson because of it. I'm going to be able to talk the talk and be able to lead with management skills that they're teaching me, sales skills that they're teaching me. And so after the 7 years, we made the leap.
And this is all the chapter when we kind of fast forwarded through getting married, but this is the chapter where you're having kids. Kids are growing up, and you took a stint and went to Denver.
Yeah.
and worked that adventure into your life while you were going through this chapter. Talk through that just a little bit.
Yeah. So Kimberly's Canadian. She's, we've been up to Calgary a few times, been to Denver a few times, but Denver's the sister city of Calgary. And Jack was just born. I started working from home. It was like before working from home was like a cool thing. It was kind of like, hey, I'm having a kid. I'm going to work from home, and just never went back to the office kind of deal. But my territory wasn't even Arizona. So we were we've been in Arizona all our lives. Like, what if I cover Denver. Denver's a territory of mine. What if we made a move? Like, what if we just took an adventure and see what life is like outside of Arizona? Worst case, Arizona's not going anywhere. We can always come back. And so we made the decision. We made the move. And that was another pivotal moment just to find out what we were capable of, right? Just to say, yeah, we can do big things and hard things and exciting things. And so we did. We moved to Denver. We had our second child out there. As you know, Victoria was born in Colorado. And then we moved back. We were only there for about 15 months, 16 months or so. And we just really missed home. And Arizona was a place for us that we knew we kind of took for granted a little bit, living here all along. And so we moved back with 2 kids. So we always joke we migrated to the cold to have a baby and then came back home to the warm.
That house was awesome.
That house is beautiful.
I will never let Jack forget about the day that he will never remember, but that I watched Frozen with him.
Yeah.
The entire thing.
Yeah. I was passed out on the couch.
And he was locked in. Jack was locked in on Frozen at that point.
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, that house was nice. That basement, the sunroom, just looking out and seeing the Rockies with the snow-capped mountains. That was beautiful. We talk about it a lot. Like, what if we did stick it out? Like, what if we did raise the kids there?
Glad you didn't.
But yeah, then we came home, and obviously life would definitely not be the same.
We're getting closer to current day. You obviously were a sponge. This was not a short decision going off on your own or with your now partner, with Jaime. I wanted you to talk through the real transition period when you said this was going to be go time, and talk through what it looked like leaving ADP and going down the path out on your own in entrepreneurship.
So Jaime, she's my business partner. She was hired the same year you and I were hired at MasterTax. Yep. We've known her forever. Obviously knew we could work together really well. We had always talked about it. We'd travel to conferences and do different things, and we'd be like, man, we could do this. Like, we're meeting with all these people. Like, we could do this. And so her daughter's the same age as my daughter. So kids were young, and it was like, well, time's not right. Like, we'll see what happens. That time when I was in Denver, I met Kevin out in Colorado. He was up in Fort Collins, a payroll company. And at the time I was trying to sell him MasterTax. And I remember when I was like, hey, Kevin, I'm moving back to Phoenix. Maybe we can meet up before I head back. My whole purpose was to try and develop a relationship and sell him MasterTax. And he asked me a question. He goes, well, what's your plan? Like, are you going to be at MasterTax forever, ADP forever, or what are you doing? And I was like, no, we've got plans to start our own deal at some point. And he goes, okay. We spent 2 hours of that 2.5 hour meeting, 30 minutes catching up, 5 minutes maybe of trying to get on MasterTax. The other 2 hours, how can we figure out a way to work together? And so when I moved back, it wasn't a quick jump, but it had marinated for a long time. And the catalyst to that was, okay, the kids are 4 and 2. We just turned 31. This was 30. And I was like, okay, well, let's start putting this into motion. I don't want to be starting this at 40. And it was a matter of like, let's start putting the framework in. And so we built it out for a year, and it ended up becoming a franchise because we leaned on them. We partnered with them, and it couldn't be a true partnership because Jaime and I wanted to own our own deal and support our own clients. So we built a franchise agreement with them. I'll always be grateful, very thankful for how open Kevin was to this. I mean, he let someone that he knew kind of in the industry, but obviously saw something in me to say, hey, I want to expand. You want to start. Let me open up what I've got going on. We'll support you, but you go run with it. And so we built out our team. We started from zero, no clients, and we supported small business at a high level out here under the Journey brand.
And you had no direct reports at ADP nor MasterTax. You were never in a quote unquote managerial leadership position.
That's right.
That's what's always been so impressive to me. How quickly did those skills come?
It's a lot of learning, a lot of trial and error. You screw up a lot.
Too easy of an answer.
Yeah.
Keep going.
You, I'll tell you what, the hardest thing about running a business is managing people. It's the number one thing. My dad always had a line. It's like, if I didn't have to deal with clients and I didn't have to deal with people or employees, it would be beautiful. Life would be so good. But then
and you'd have no revenue.
Where's the fulfillment in that, right? Yeah, you'd have no revenue. But like he's a software engineer, so he just wanted to work, right? And I'm cut from that same cloth. Like I'm very much like, do your job. Like, figure it out. Like, you can do this. You don't need me or whatever. But I realize that's not always the case, and people do need development, and they do need to learn from you, and they do need, so when you're in this position of being the owner, you have this ability, this platform, if you will, where it's your duty to make sure that these people are leveling up.
Yeah.
Right. It's your duty to make sure that they're growing and developing. If you're letting them just sit back and coast, then I think you're failing as a leader. And so I don't know where that came from. I think it's just from being in an entrepreneurial family and just always wanting growth and seeking knowledge and just kind of, childhood. But, I don't think I'm always the most liked person. I try to be, and I found out early on that it's not good to be the most liked. When you try to become friends with direct reports, if you will, there's some things that you can get taken advantage of, and then you're like, that didn't really work out really well. And so you have to make some moves, and that's not always fun either. It's hard, but you have to compartmentalize it and just be like, this is business. It's not personal. And you got to focus on the vision. And if everyone's bought in the vision, everyone understands.
Well, I know you've become great at it. I've heard it from multiple different angles. So I want to, as we come to wrap here, you've talked about the kind of binary nature of payroll tax. You and I've talked to it ad nauseum. It's a great business because it's required, but it is a algorithm. It is a formula. There are ways to get creative with it, but you've had to scratch that creative itch that we started with.
Yeah.
Talk about OPPO Flow. Talk about Dolphin now a little bit. These are completely separate. They're passion projects, but how has that benefited you in all other areas of life?
Yeah. So I realized in the first 5 years of launching our franchise here in Phoenix that this was going to be really, really hard, and it was going to take a lot longer than I expected. There was some really low lows of like, did I make the right choice? And real hard conversations with my wife. And it was like trying to scale and trying to delegate, but you couldn't, and then things wouldn't go right. And you're like, I'm the only one that can do this. Like, you're having that feeling, and then you're trying, there's just so much going on. And you're like, when does it end? And there is no light at the end of the tunnel. And you start getting into these dark places. So about right around this time, as we're coming out of COVID as well, and a lot of people were going through some things. And I was just like, man, how do I get out of this rut? Like, where are the opportunities here? Like, how do I change this mood that I'm in for the last 6 months or however long? And it really came from that circle of influence that we have and come to know as Gento. And that group has a lot of heavy hitters, very successful people. And we do an annual summit, and there was an opportunity there to raise my hand to give a session at Summit. We had been, I think it was session number 2 or summit number 2 maybe. I'm like, shit, I don't know what the hell I'm going to talk about though, but I just raised my hand anyway. And I was like, that's what I needed. I need to challenge myself on purpose to something that I don't know what I'm doing and see if I can figure it out. If it bombs, whatever, move on. People will forget about it. But if it is successful, then maybe something comes of it. I didn't know what that was. I didn't know what I was going to talk about. And I realized that the only way that I'm sitting in this chair right now is purely because of the opportunities that I said yes or no to. And then when I said yes, I went all in. I didn't stop. I didn't half-ass it. And so that became my topic. It was all about opportunity and awareness and how to attack those, and then also how to navigate the turbulence. And so I built an entire framework, and that's what OPPO Flow is. OPPO is an acronym. I like using, it didn't have to be OPPO, but I was trying to achieve a mindset shift. And, my kids play baseball and play sports. And when you hit a ball OPPO, it's going opposite direction. Mm-hmm. So it kind of is a play on the mindset shift. Like, let's not think in chaos. Let's have a mindset shift and just think very clearly and very focused. And OPPO became an acronym of open mind, purpose, preparation, and opportunity awareness. And really what that means is you can't get anywhere without being aware and open to new ideas and possibilities. If you don't know where you're going, if you haven't defined your purpose, then you're running in multiple different directions trying to get back on the path, but you don't even know what that path looks like. And then preparation is putting in the work, being a knowledge seeker, being a sponge, and consistently stacking the evidence to have the confidence that when you develop the opportunity awareness, you can act immediately and go all in. So I built out a whole framework called OPPO FLOW, wrote a storybook newsletter, which was an email newsletter, did that for 2 years, which that was really fun for me to get back into the creative writing. Obviously, we've done workshops together, and the podcast was launched from that mindset that we have here, and speaking engagements and things like that. So it's really cool to this came out of nowhere. It's not anything new. It's just packaged in a way for people to understand. And I trademarked it and started speaking about it, and now it's just something that got me out of that rut, and it worked so well for me, and it gave me purpose, and it gave me that creative outlet. It's maybe this will work for others. And I think that's what life is all about. I think life is all about putting the oxygen mask on. When you're happy, healthy, and focused yourself, you can make a positive impact on others. And if you're not, it's very difficult to make change or make an impression or inspire others to be great in their own right.
Bamboo banger to close it. Do these mics drop? I don't think they do. Dude, I didn't get to 2/3 of my questions, but this studio time has been awesome. It's so great to actually do this interview face to face, belly to belly, as the old school corporate people say. And it's been an honor, man. You're killing it, and this chapter is just getting started. Yeah, man. That's fun doing an interview style. We've never done this one. It's I think I was almost about to cry at one point. It's like no tears going back in life, How often do you reflect like that? That was cool. Yeah, I'm sure there'll be more tears to flow in the upcoming sessions. All right, we'll be back at you next week. This one's wrapped. Appreciate you, dude.